Hey, Todd, thank you so much for joining me. I was wondering, what is the most challenging for you within the live events industry, and how does communication affect that challenge?
Hmm. Well, thanks for having me, Siobhan. And I think that there's a few things that wind up being challenges for us, and my answer might be a little unorthodox when we think about communications in our industry. I'll be honest with you. The one thing I'm usually scanning for in communications is what are we not talking about that we should be. A lot of times, people will approach you with the topic that feels pressing or burning at the moment, and usually it's tactical, right? It's something that's right in front of you that you can sort of address in the moment. What I found to be true more often than not, though, is whatever that specific challenge is, it's not really the root of what's going on. And you're going to be dancing around it until you get to it. And I'll give you an example. So, in our industry, we talk a lot about the effects of mental health or upskilling or mentorship, varieties of training that exist. And those things are all wonderful. But I think a lot of times we tend to focus on something that's very simplistic that we can get our arms around. So the challenge might be, well, I just wasn't trained properly to do that. And that might be so, but it also might be that that individual's maybe not in the right headspace to be able to find the best solution on that day or have the right communication.
Are you, my dog picks the most appropriate moment to chime in. And I think what he's asking is, are you suggesting that although we have a list of issues within our industry that are communication related, they all kind of relate and intersect with each other? Because you mentioned someone who may not have received proper training, or even if they did receive training, during that they may not have been in the correct headspace. And what that kind of tells me is, did they have something personally going on, or are they younger and this is one of their first real jobs, so their headspace has affected their performance and the way in which they receive the training?
I think that's right. I think that there is an intersection of many things happening for people when you ask about what challenges specifically come up. Well, I think in our industry, right, there are well-known challenges that we're addressing that are very tangible. Things like we don't have enough people to fill roles in required subject matter expertise level positions. That's something very tangible we could point to and say, yes, that's a need. I think everybody would agree that it's a worthy effort to get behind training initiatives and strategies that help us on ramp more people into the right skills with the right mindset, the right safety training, the right tools to be able to execute their job in whatever function that is. While we all think that's worthy, though, I think it merits saying that for anybody in our industry, if they are encountering challenges in the field, maybe not to be so quick to zoom in and be diagnostic, right? Sometimes trying to diagnose and troubleshoot what's happening for someone is not always helpful in getting to the answer. And I found that to be especially true in situations where mental health is involved, right? And that's a big topic in our industry. So that certainly could be listed as its own challenge or focal point. I've found it to be true in areas where the stress of certain situations is just too much. The fatigue is too much. Sometimes there are other factors involved that may not be obvious, home issues. So I think that all of those things contribute to it. And so one of the things I always kind of take a pause if somebody meets me with a lot of intensity. The first thing I kind of do is go, okay, are we safe? Are we having the conversation we ought to be having to deal with the issue? But also, I'm scanning for what else is going on. What's the other thing that maybe we need to talk about that might be more helpful, bigger picture.
And even within the mental health space, which is just one example that you mentioned, there are many different things to consider. We talk about suicide prevention, we talk about depression, we talk about anxiety, and like you mentioned, the stressors of the job, which contribute to or exacerbate different aspects of your mental health, which in turn affects your performance on the job, or it affects your ability to receive or give communication or to receive training. Let's kind of zoom in and focus in on training for a moment. You mentioned there's a difference between tactics and strategy. And I would put tactics under, diagnostics. When you are diagnosing a situation and you just want to give it like a tactical solution, which is, in my mind, a band-aid that doesn't really address the root cause. So my question for you is, what is an example for tactical versus strategic solutions in addressing training issues?
Sure. It's a good question. What I think about being in a tactical situation specific to a training issue like you're talking about, I tend to think of the again the very tangible things that you can do. If somebody's not using a safety harness correctly, that's very tangible. It's very tactical. We can correct that situation to make sure that they do use it properly. We can give them the training to guide them around errors that we see and course correct. What we might not know, or what might not be as obvious, is if that person is leading a team over a period of time, we might want them to have a bigger picture view of what it is we're trying to accomplish together, right? And so instead of that person saying, I'm hanging points, that person is saying, I'm building a safe event. And I think those two mindsets are very different. And the reason they're different is when I say I'm building a safe event, it implies that I have some responsibility to see something and say something for others too. It implies that I'm being mindful of how my actions are impacting others. The tactical mindset doesn't necessarily imply that. It's more internal. It's more centric to that person rather than being more strategic to say, how are my actions affecting the other people around me, and what do I need to do? So I think that's how I would relate those.
I think that's a very powerful statement. What do you think the best way to strategically communicate to others would be in order to encourage more of that latter mindset in which someone is more, they're more collaborative and they are not thinking of just themselves and their task and their team, but they are considering the other departments around them and helping to facilitate a safe event,
Uh-huh.
and they're thinking of the big picture. So what do you think are ways in which we can encourage that mindset?
Yeah, I think it is a mindset worthy of being encouraged. And I have seen it happen a number of times in the field, in the moment, where people will make comments to try to offer big picture guidance. But in my opinion, trying to do it in the field, in the moment, is the wrong time to do it. Bigger picture, more strategic guidance usually should happen ahead of time. So your clues will be, as an organization or team, if you've had issues in the past and you're not imminently in that situation right now, that's probably a good opportunity to set up a controlled environment where you could say, let's get together and have this conversation. And so I would suggest do it before the event happens. Do it before the conversation in the field happens, and do it thoughtfully. Have a structured agenda that you can look to and say, what is our shared vision together? What are we looking to accomplish? And who do we want to be in this environment? Who do we want to be seen as? How do we want to be branded, for lack of a better term, if you will, by others when they see us? Do they see somebody who is a good rigger, or do they see somebody who is a high level professional? And it may be a subtle difference, but I think you have to structure that ahead of time. I don't think you can do it in the field. And I think hosting those types of conversations to say, can we agree on the vision? Can we agree on who we want to be? Can we agree on what that customer experience is, right? We're all serving people in some aspect. And how does that look and feel for them? And those are informative data points to help broaden that mindset to say, I need to step out of myself and I need to understand how I'm impacting others. And is that how I want to impact others? And, maybe yes and maybe no, right? But that's the opportunity to sit around the table and say, you know what, I didn't feel great about how that went down. Let's talk about that. Let's figure out what that's going to look like so we can feel like it's great the next time it comes around. So I think structuring those conversations, those opportunities, that team building, that camaraderie is very important because it builds vulnerability and authenticity in a safe space where people can be heard.
Yeah, I totally agree. What I'm taking away from your answer is it's important to have these conversations before there's a need to have the conversation. If you are being proactive with this type of conversation, people aren't on the defensive. It's different for you to be proactive with this rather than have this type of a conversation as a result of, because then whomever you're having the conversation with, they're going to know, well, this is because I did this. And they're immediately going to be in a defensive mindset, and they are going to be just naturally less receptive to that conversation, no matter how constructive that is. So that's number one, is being proactive with this conversation. Another takeaway that I gathered from your answer is it's important to have a safe space. It's important to have these types of conversations in a very controlled environment where people feel people feel safe. They need to feel safe. And what that means is they feel that they are able to ask questions. They feel they are able to give their thoughts and their concerns without judgment. So that's a very big, important factor in facilitating these conversations. And while having the conversation, focusing on the we aspect of it, focusing on the team aspect, finding the common goal, finding the common vision. And, it almost reminds me of like having school spirit. You guys are your one team. You want to be proud of who you are. You want to be proud of the work that you're doing. You want to be proud of the team that you are working with. And that's really important. And these are all things that build that work culture. These are all ways to facilitate this conversation about addressing communication issues with regards to training or safety or performance or what have you within our industry. So did I miss any important takeaways from your answer?
No, I think you got that exactly right. And thank you for that. I agree. And you've probably heard me say this before. I think unified is more important than unanimous.
Oh, I
Diverse,
love that. I
and
don't know. Actually, I don't know that I've heard you say that before, but I really like that.
it's I think it's a core tenet when you're working with teams. And the reason I think that is because teams and the best versions of themselves bring a diverse group of people together to use their individual skills for the good of the whole, right? So being unanimous, if everyone's unanimous in the team all the time, it might suggest that your team is maybe not diverse enough in its makeup, that you're not bringing enough kind of new ideas and new approaches that could and probably should be heard. But that being said, being unified is very important. So even if you have people on a team who might not believe 100% that that was the best way to do it, they will 100% be behind the idea together to make it happen. And I think there's something else that happens in that too, beyond just the we're one team spirit as you described. I think that gets seen by others and it builds peace of mind. They learn to
Mm.
trust that you all do work together in that way, that you are mutually respected amongst your group, that you do share in that common vision and that common outcome. And when it comes to safety related services or entertainment and events industry, that unspoken cue goes a long way. So I think it works on a lot of levels.
That's yeah, it's I just want to point out that's nonverbal communication, which will tell other vendors or clients that you guys are a strong team and therefore you guys are a safe team.
Uh-huh.
And among other things, that's what that, unification, not unanimity. That's what that is communicating to people who are observing. So,
Yeah,
well, thank
because
you.
distracted teams make mistakes.
Yeah, yeah. And owning and practicing accountability and owning up to those mistakes, it actually builds trust when you own up to those mistakes as an individual or as a team. So, and that's another form of nonverbal communication. So, Todd, thank you so much for joining me on with this impromptu interview slash conversation. I love that I said, would you be available for like a 3 to 5 minute conversation? And it's been 15 minutes now. So
That's all right. It's always good to see you. I appreciate it.
thank you so much, Todd. Yeah, it's great. I'm going to put this on LinkedIn most likely. So is there anything that you would like to share with the LinkedIn audience?
I appreciate the work that you do,
Oh,
and I think it's tremendous that there's more focus in key areas that our industry has needed a long time. So, an appreciation and thanks for all you do.
thank you so much, Todd. I really appreciate you coming on and speaking with me today. So take care, everybody who is whomever is watching this, whether you're on LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube, wherever you may be. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care, guys.